Hello and welcome to the two-part dictation portion of the week one lecture. There's going to be three parts to this. First of all, I'm going to discuss some sort of nuts and bolts technical things about the way that dictation assignments are going to work this term. The second thing is we're going to go through some of the strategies in the packet for dictating two-part music. The third thing is we are going to do an in-class dictation similar to how we used to do it when we all met as a class back in the good old days. So the first thing is just some technical things about how dictation assignments are going to work this term. One of the those of you eagle-eyed observers will notice that in the syllabus we do not ask you to purchase the Karpinski MP3s. I'm going to be putting MP3s of all the dictation assignment content onto the Canvas assignment description, meaning that you're not going to have to access the Norton site for those in addition to checking out Zoom and Canvas and things like that. They're all going to be there. It's going to be a one-stop shop. There's also going to be some other assignments that aren't from the Karpinski manual, MP3s that are part of the dictation assignment. So just to make it easier for everybody, everything that's on the dictation assignments is going to be accessible in the Canvas assignment description in the form of an MP3. Okay. Another thing about sort of accessibility is those of you who may not have access to a printer, I'm going to be putting pertinent information from the dictation blank into the Canvas assignment description. For example, you know, the bottom number of the meter signs, the keys, things like that. Just again to kind of make your guys' lives easier. And then one thing about how you're going to be handing in your dictation assignments, because you're not going to be physically going to your lab, the idea that you're going to turn in this blank to your GE doesn't really work. And so what we're asking is that you submit a scan of your dictation assignment. If you don't have access to a printer and don't use the blank, you can use staff paper. There's some instructions in the syllabus about that, just making sure things are clearly labeled, what assignment, what numbers they are. And then one request that I think will make the GE's lives better is if you're on Android, get an app where you can take a picture and scan it to a PDF. If you're using an iPhone, there's a way to do that in Notes. If you do just a quick Google search, there's a way to scan it and it converts it to a PDF. That'll make life easier for your GEs because of lighting and things like that. It basically turns it into a PDF, like just a grayscale image. And my guess is that that's going to make things way better for your GEs. So regardless of your device, if you're going to be using either an Android or an iPhone, just get an app. Or in the case of iPhone, it's already in the iOS. Just figure out how to do that and post a PDF rather than a picture of your dictation assignment when you submit it on the Canvas assignment description. I think those are the main things. There might be more details about the dictation assignments that we give you as we kind of get our footing with all this, but those are the main things. Okay, now in terms of the two-part music, if you take a look, if we go back to the packet here, you'll see point number 2, dictation of two-part music. Performing two-part music using the suggestions above is the surest way to develop the peripheral listening skills necessary to dictate two-part music. So I'll be honest with you, that's one of the challenges of doing class the way that we are online, is that there are all these feedback loops that happen in this course between listening, doing singbacks, doing sight singing, doing performing, and how that translates into dictation. So that's one of the reasons I spent so much time going over the performing two-part music section in the part 1 part of the lecture, is that don't phone in that. Actually spend time practicing that, because those peripheral listening skills will spill into your ability to do dictation for this week for two-part music, but later for harmonic dictation, since the higher and lower parts are kind of, that's the whole structural framework of the harmonic dictation. So that was the first sentence. For two-part dictations, you will be giving an extra listening for a total of 5, so that you may choose which part to prioritize in your listening and how you may find it useful to dedicate a given listening to one part and then move to the other part when ready. However, even when focusing your attention on a given line, you can use a peripheral listening of the other part to confirm the accuracy of your dictation. considering the following features when listening to how the two parts relate to one another. So what that means, another way of saying that, is that there's going to be a certain amount of sleuthing that happens when we do two-part music and later into harmonic dictation, where you're going to recognize, oh, this part is on so, and I hear like a third or a tenth, so that means the other part must be on T. There's going to be a certain amount of spillover between the parts that's also going to be aided by your practicing of two-part music. Okay, rhythm. Does the composite rhythm of both parts fit with the meter you have chosen? Can you imagine the notated composite rhythm of the passage in the meter you have chosen? Are there passages with unison rhythms? Are there rhythms in strettos, which is imitation between the parts? Are there rhythmic relationships between the parts that fall into predictable patterns that enable you to fill in the gaps of your aural snapshot of a listening? Okay, so where you're going to notice that in terms of rhythm is you're going to notice some of the examples in the dictation assignment. They're actually, the rhythms are the same. They're just sort of melodic parts in parallel. And so your ability to hear the rhythms combined versus hear independent rhythms is super important. Pitch. Do the scale degrees you have chosen for each part create the interval you are hearing? I kind of mentioned that, let the cat out of the bag a second ago. Especially at the beginning and end of an excerpt. That's going to be super important, the beginnings and the endings of an excerpt, especially the ending when we're talking about cadence types and things like that. That's going to be super important to zero in on. Where do you hear consonances and dissonances? Do the dissonances you hear resolve in predictable ways? The predictable way that the dissonances want to resolve is by step, right? They don't lead to another dissonance typically. And so you can leverage the knowledge that you guys have gained from your written theory class in this two-part music, which should adhere to the principles of counterpoint that you've learned in your written theory class, and then later when we do harmonic dictation. Harmony. Within a given harmonic area, do the pitches between both parts fit the harmony implied? Do individual parts contain voice leading we have studied in our exercises? For example, do, ti, do for 1, 5, 1. You'll notice in those Karpinski, the examples where, for example, this one, where we just go back and forth between different inversions of 1, 5, and 1, even though those were melodic or a single line, the outer voices, meaning like the lower voice, would oftentimes suggest bass motion, and the uppermost voice would suggest the soprano motion. Even though those were melodic, one of the reasons we tested those so much for you was so you can think about those as a harmonic entity, so that it maps onto the work that we're going to be doing. Melodic elements. Do you hear imitation between the parts? Are there parallel intervals between the voices? Do the parts conform to your knowledge of good counterpoint? So these are some general guidelines. Just keep these kind of in the back or in the front of your mind as you're going through these two-part examples, as you're combining what you're hearing with what you're expecting, from the counterpoint, and also, what you're expecting from an individual voice in terms of good voice leading. So, I'm actually not going to go through these when we do our practice dictation. Like, I'm not going to stop on each one and go through all these. It would take too long. But just read that. Just have these things at hand. When you're doing these, just sort of as a cheat sheet, or you can, you just have them in your mind as you go through these two-part dictations. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm going to say something real quick about strategizing. So now we're going to go into the third part. That was the second part. Now we're going to go into the third part where we actually do a dictation together. Okay, and before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about strategy. When we do guided listening in lecture, a lot of times you'll notice that I offer a specific strategy for finding, like at the end of this listening we want this, at the end of listening we want this. When we move into two-part music and harmonic dictation, some students will find that the ones that we suggest don't exactly work for them. Like, for example, an obvious one is this week we're doing two-part music. So what part should you focus on in the first couple listenings? Should you focus on the soprano part or the bass part? I'm going to be focusing on the bass part on the first listenings for a couple different reasons. It's not only because I have a bass in the corner, but it's also because this is going to map onto what we're asking you to do for harmonic dictation, because the bass part is going to inform so much about what we expect in harmonic dictation that I think that this week, if you can sensitize yourself to that, that's good. That being said, next week we're also going to have bassline dictation, so you're going to get another week of that. If you find it easier this week to focus on soprano on your first couple listenings, no problem, do that. It's just the most important thing is that you have a strategy for your dictations that works for you, so you can do these in a set number of listenings. One thing about that, you'll notice that we don't have graded live dictation tests, dictation quizzes rather, this term weekly, and for some reason my equipment just went off. Sorry for the tech glitch there. What I was talking about is this term we actually don't have dictation quizzes that are done live just because of all the academic integrity issues that this online format presents for us. So what that means is that your attendance and your participation in your dictation labs with your GE via Zoom is going to be super important for making sure that your technique in dictation is solid. Okay, just basically making sure that you're not listening to your dictation examples 30 times, doing it at a keyboard. You want to make sure that the way that you're doing your dictations has integrity and that is consistent with the way that we discuss with you to do these, so that when you have things like your midterm and your final dictation exams, that you're able to to get a decent grade on those things, frankly. Okay, so to our dictation, to our guided dictation, this is actually going to look different than the way we did it when we met as a class. I'm not going to be sitting with the key performing it. I'm just going to basically be doing this in the same way that you guys are. I have the MP3 here on my phone. I'm going to be playing it and listening, and let's talk strategy in each one. Again, we mentioned we're going to focus on the bass part on the first two listenings. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play for the first time, and these excerpts are much shorter than our melodic dictation excerpts, by the way. The two-part dictation excerpts as well as the harmonic dictation excerpts, generally speaking, are going to be shorter than the melodic dictation excerpts that we've had thus far. I know you guys are probably happy about that, but just letting you know that's the case. So there's a good chance that after this first listening, if you play back the tape, we'll be able to sing back the bass part together. Okay, so I'm going to play it for the first time. I want you to trap it, play back the loop. At the end of this listening, I'm going to ask for a tonic. I'm going to ask for what we feel is the pulse, what we feel is the meter, and the starting and ending pitch of the bass. Okay, here we are. First listening. You can go ahead and pause it and play back the tape in your mind's ear as long as you like. And then I'm going to ask you, where do we hear our tonic? Let's sing our tonic. Do. Okay, now let's ask, where do we feel the pulse? Okay, I'm going to start, my guess, this doesn't really work doing it this way, but my guess is we probably feel the pulse either here or here. Okay, I'm more inclined to feel the earlier one as the pulse right here, and let me tell you the reason why. We notice that the short notes, to me, they feel better as like if we were here, ta, 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 dee, ta. That feels better to me than ta, dee, mi, ta, just because of, the excerpt would be so short if it were that way. And just like when I visualize the notation, for some reason I'm hearing the earlier one. So this is what I'm going to be thinking of as the pulse. Okay, play back the tape and let's ask, does duple, triple, or quadruple meter feel best? Go ahead and play back the tape and conduct duple. You should recognize that that feels pretty good. Okay, then we can do it in triple as well. So in your mind's ear, I'm playing back the tape of the excerpt, and this feels super, super awkward. Okay, so we know it's going to be duple or quadruple. It's the same duple versus quadruple thing. Let's just call it duple. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to play it again, and then we're going to sing it as a class, or me and you. We're going to sing it. Here we are, next listening. Oh, what happened? Here we are. Okay, let's sing the bass part together. I'll give you two measures, then we sing. Here we are. 1, 2, 1, 2. Do, do, so, ti, do, so, do. All right, go ahead. I'm going to actually write out in proto-notation what I just sang. If you had something that was different, figure out where your mistake was and notate in protonotation what we just sang. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. My technology is going to get a lot better, but for right now, hopefully your protonotation should look like, this. Okay, here we are. Third listening. This part we're going to be focusing on the upper part. I think because of our peripheral listening, we're probably prepared to sing it after this, but I'll go ahead and play it. Okay, so there's the third listening. If you need another listening before we sing this, go ahead, scrub back and listen to it again. And if you're ready to perform it, let's perform it. I'm actually going to go a little bit under tempo just to get all the solfege syllables correctly. So let's go 1, 2, let's ask before we start. My bad, I did that again just like I do in lecture. Let's sing the starting pitch of the upper voice, which is do. Okay, so same thing, 2 measures, then we sing. 1, 2, 1, 2. Do, mi, re, so, mi, fa, mi, re, do. That's what I heard all of you guys singing, so I know it's correct. Sorry for that. I'm going to go ahead and write the upper part in protonotation now, and then you can check with what I've got. Okay. Should look like that. All right, now I'm going to transfer this into standard notation as soon as I find the key. I'll give you guys a second to do that. I may need to grab another key. I need to grab the key. Oh, I've got it. Okay, here we are. So I'm going to transfer this into standard notation, and then we can take a look and make sure that yours and mine is the same. Okay, now I have to warn you guys, I did something a little funny with my stem directions, and that is I'm so used to doing 4-part harmony with things like this that I intuitively put the outer voices all stems up and all stems down. You should probably follow your typical stem stem direction conventions. So this is what I've got, which should hopefully be what you guys have. And there we go. Hope you enjoyed the in-class dictation. Let me say one final thing about that, and that is, I think I said this earlier, but if you have questions about any of this in the process, please post it in the discussions. This is a really, really weird way to teach oral skills, and one thing that will really help us is for you guys to be honest about what things you're finding challenging. And it's not only, the year's been challenging, just in terms of the content that we've had the first couple terms, but really where the rubber really meets the road in this class was harmonic dictation, and we're really going to rely on you guys to reach out if you need help. That's really the only way we're going to make this work. So please post questions or observations or any other information in the discussion about for your lecture and for your singing labs as possible, and that will help us help you. Have a wonderful first week. Enjoy your stay-at-home order.